Okay. All right, thank you. I hope everyone is enjoying their dinner as well as the opportunity to get together with friends. Once again, we'd like to thank Steve Gonzalez of Catering by the Family for dinner this evening. As well as Father Tom Morgan for graciously allowing us the use of Higgins Hall here. Thank you to our Men for Others dinner committee of Ernie Edgar, David Kahn, John Bensavenga, Mike Hahn, Carter Anderson for pulling everything together. Thank you, guys. Along with our AV folks, DCE. Thank you. Our dads have given a lot of their time and talents to the school over the past year. Their service teaches us what it means to be men for others. I'd like to thank my fellow officers, Vice President John Mace, Treasurer Ron Battle, Secretary Tree Dang, and our parking coordinator, Mike Sweet, for their contributions throughout the year. I'd like to take a moment to recognize a few of the accomplishments and the events of the Dads Club this year. We supported the athletic department on Friday nights by parking, grilling, and collecting gate receipts. We started the year off in September with the Dads Club barbecue, followed by our involvement with the homecoming barbecue. This group likes to grill and eat. We held the annual turkey drive to help families in need, and once again, we had a fantastic response, with over 250 turkeys collected. We helped set up and take down for our gala event, Gaudioso, and just recently, we grilled sausages for the celebration of the arts. Did I say this group likes to grill and eat? We have a tremendous group of dads that pulled together to support Jesuit. This year we had more than 150 dads come out to volunteer for over 40 events, while contributing over 3,600 hours to the school. Much of our contributions center around our parking efforts. We park for Bulls, Bucks, Outback Bowl, concert events, and again on Friday nights. The mission of the Jesuit Dads Club is to support the school in its efforts to provide sufficient financial aid for every qualified student, regardless of their financial capability. As a result of their hard work that our Dads Club put into parking efforts this year, I'm proud to present Father Hermes with a check for funds raised in the amount of $250,000. If Ron and John, if you can come up to present. At this time, I'd like to recognize the 2016 Michael G. Sanji Men for Others Award. I'd first like to provide a little background about this award, which is given each year by the Jesuit Dads Club to a current or past member whose generous service to the school models the characteristics of being a true man for others. Michael Sanji is a graduate of Jesuit High School in New Orleans. He served his country as a pilot in the United States Marine Corps. His two sons attended Jesuit High School, Christopher in the class of '98 and Patrick in the class of 2000. Michael was one of the most motivated, respected, and inspiring members of the Dads Club since its inception. A born leader and mentor, he never had to be asked to perform any task in support of the mission of the school, no matter how mundane or menial the task was. He was always willing to go above and beyond what would be expected of a volunteer, serving as a role model not only for our sons, but for the dads as well. He continued to support the school through service with Dad's Club long after his sons had graduated, never seeking reward nor recognition. His example inspired the Dad's Club to institute the Michael G. Sanji Award in his honor. We're pleased to have him and his wife Barbara and their son Chris here with us this evening. I can't count the number of volunteers throughout the course of the year that did so much, but we have many deserving dads that have contributed hours over the course of the year. This year's winner of the 2016 Sanji Award is Kevin O'Brien. Kevin is an alumnus of the class of 1981 and the father of 2 Jesuit graduates. He exemplifies the spirit of the Sanji Award and is a true man for others. He's been active in every aspect of the Dad's Club for almost a decade, and he's been an inspiration to myself as well as many other dads. He spent many Friday evenings overseeing the grill and concession stand. I even hear there's an O'Brien sandwich, which is not on the menu. Kevin's put in hundreds of hours over the last 4 years. He's given up weekends to help the parking on countless times, and I've even heard there's a rumor that he's dressed up in the tiger suit to draw attention to our parking efforts when times were slow. His dedication and effort is greatly appreciated. While Kevin couldn't be here tonight, it's with great pride that we award Kevin O'Brien the 2016 Sanji Award. Father?
It's our tradition every year at the Men for Others dinner to invite 2 seniors to speak about their fathers and their relationships with their fathers and the ways in which their dads have modeled for them what it means to be a man for others. These various events and all the activities of the Dad's Club that Tim has spoken about, the parking, the supportive school events, and then especially and above all, the bonding events and the service events with our fathers and sons is precisely what makes the Dad's Club so important and so special at Jesuit High School. As you all know, we live in a culture in which there are many absent fathers. We live in a culture that needs the ideals of heroic manhood raised up for our sons, for our students. I personally want to thank all of you for taking the time to be here with your sons this evening, to spend this time with your sons, and for all that you do to support their experience throughout the year at Jesuit High School. It's a great opportunity for us now to listen to 2 seniors speak about their relationships with their fathers and how their fathers have been men for others for them. And our first speaker will be John Bensavenga.
Hello. As Father Hermes just mentioned, my name is John Bensavenga, and I am a senior at Jesuit High School. For those of you who don't know me, I went to Christ the King before Jesuit, and I am the oldest of 4 sons. My dad, John William Bensavenga, has always been an inspiration to me. Ever since I was little, I always strived to be just like my dad. I wanted to be big like him, I wanted to be hardworking like him, but one thing I definitely did not want was his bald head. On a more serious note, I attribute almost all of my talents to you, Dad. We have had countless experiences where I learned new lessons and I learned more about myself. When I was 14, my dad and I went on a father-son camping trip up north. I remember carrying a canoe on my shoulders as we portaged in between lakes on the boundary waters of Minnesota and Canada. The mosquitoes there were larger than any I have ever seen, and as I walked through the forest with a canoe over my head, I was easy prey for any mosquito in sight. Of course, I got swarmed by these mosquitoes, and along with getting eaten alive, my shoulders felt like they were going to fall off. All I wanted to do was throw the canoe off my shoulders and take a break, but my dad wouldn't let me. He was next to me the whole time and would never let me give up. This experience is where he taught me to push myself physically and mentally, even when I had no strength. Sports is a huge deal for my family. All of my brothers and I play sports. My favorite childhood memories all involve being on a sports team. My dad was always my favorite coach and my best coach because he had a solution to every problem that would arise. In baseball, I had the worst uppercut for the longest time, and I could not make contact with the ball. Finally, my dad took me to our backyard and immediately fixed my swing. He told me to swing my bat over a table, and this would stop me from dropping my hands and give me a level swing. After breaking a couple tables, I was able to correct my swing. This was just one of the many creative lessons that he taught me, which made me into a better athlete. If anyone knows my dad, they most likely know that his faith is a main focus of his life. I still remember 2 years ago, on his birthday, he didn't want any gifts. Instead, he wanted our whole family to go to confession. I thought this was kind of weird at the time, but I am now able to understand why he wanted that. His faith is extremely important to him, and he wanted it to be the center point of our lives as well. Recently, I have started to take my faith more seriously, and I can honestly say that this growth was from my dad and the help of my mom. He used to make me go to Mass on Sundays. Now I want to go to Mass on Sundays. Attending Jesuit has also had a huge impact on my formation of being a true practicing Catholic and not going through the motions of the Mass and prayer. Thank you, Dad, for working so hard every day to provide for your family and pay our tuition. It's truly appreciated. Recently, my dad has been using a phrase which I never really took the time to think about. The phrase is, "We can find a way." I never really understood why he kept saying this when we talked about college and other topics at the dinner table. But now I can fully grasp this concept. When he tells me that we can find a way, he's teaching me to never give up on anything and that I can make whatever I want happen. On August 22nd, 1972, my grandfather died. My dad was only 8 years old when his father passed away from a heart attack. Death is something that often plagues a person for quite a long time. I know my dad, and I know that it had a great effect on him. I have only seen my dad cry a couple of times, and almost every time I have seen him cry was when we were at the cemetery praying for his father. I often think about my dad's situation, and it reminds me to never take my parents for granted. Another thing that I know about my dad is that he used his father's death to motivate him. My dad was forced to mature at such a young age, and this contributes to a lot of his success. After August 22nd, 1972, my dad was able to find a way. He worked hard in school and out to help my grandma financially. After a lot of hard work, my father was able to graduate from West Point, but his studies would not stop there. He served in the Army for 5 years and then received his law degree at FSU on a full scholarship. It's hard to think that a child without a father, whose mother worked multiple jobs to put food on the table, would be able to achieve those things. My father was truly able to find a way to meet success. On October 7th, 2008, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. I still remember my dad picking me up from football practice, sitting me down on a bench, and telling me the news. As tears streamed down his face, he told me, "Your mom has breast cancer, but everything will be okay." Looking back, I have realized that my dad was going to find a way to do whatever he could to keep my mom alive. I remember seeing books about breast cancer on his nightstand. I remember hearing him talking to his friend who was a doctor about surgeries and treatments. I remember him praying with me and my brothers so that God would guide the doctors and specialists who worked with my mom. And most importantly, I remember Dad keeping us together and giving my mom love so that she could get through the painstaking procedures. Without you, Dad, I don't know how else we would have found a way to get through that year. I will never forget this because you taught me how a father should act, and more importantly, how a man should act when life throws you a curveball. Jesuit teaches us to be men for others, and this means that we will never back away from the challenges put in front of us. Whether it is helping a homeless man on the street when no one is watching, or doing mission work in third world countries, we will never back away. Instead, we will find a way to help these people and act as Jesus did while he was on earth. This is what sets a Jesuit student apart, and that's what sets a man for others apart. Dad, by your lifelong example, you've always taught me how to be a man for others. Thank you, and I love you.
Thank you, John. Our next speaker is Senior Nick Perilla.
Good evening. As Father Hermes said, I'm Nick Perilla. In sharing with you the relationship I have with my father and the example he has set for me, I'm telling you about the person who has literally molded me into the man I am today. My dad, Joe Perillo, was born in Brooklyn, New York in 1965. In 1977, his father decided to pack up the family and moved down to Tampa, where he would soon open up a pizza restaurant called the Italian Pavilion, and then later another named Perillo's Pizza. My dad grew up in Tampa and attended a certain school on Rome near the Hillsborough River, but only for his first year. He then got some common sense and transferred to King, where he finished his high school career. I'd say he made the right decision. He then met my mother and married her in 1989. 7 years of blissful marriage later, I was born. And just 1 year after that, my sister Danielle was born. My parents were so happy. You might even say complete. My mom had given birth to a stud of a boy named Nicholas, followed by the most beautiful girl named Danielle. Everything was great until my family received our first big challenge. When I was only a year old, my sister was just a newborn, my father was diagnosed with leukemia, a cancer of the bone marrow. This was so sudden and unpredicted, and a huge shock to my family. After recommendations by one of his doctors in Tampa, my mother and father ventured to Seattle in order to receive the best cancer treatment in the world. But that meant leaving me and my sister behind in Florida. In order to survive this cancer, my dad had to go through a bone marrow transplant. Fortunately, his sister, my Aunt Laura, was a perfect match. He was warned by his doctors that this procedure was going to be very intense and that family surrounding him would be important to his recovery. They suggested that my sister and I be there. So my mom made all the arrangements, and we flew to Seattle. And that became our home for 4 months. There were many days when he struggled and suffered, but he always found the courage to fight. He was not only fighting for himself, but for his wife and his children, and this motivated him to never give up. Looking back, I understand exactly why it was recommended for us to be together in Seattle, because together we were one and we were complete. With time and with treatment, he eventually went into remission and we were able to return home in October of 1999. For the next couple of years, his health continued to improve, not without challenge, but with great faith. And our family was getting back on track. Then one day, in November of 2003, an even worse tragedy struck our family. After returning home from a soccer game, my 3-year-old sister, Danielle, laid down for a typical afternoon nap and passed away unexpectedly. After much shock and disbelief, we found out that she had an undetected heart condition, which basically caused her heart to stop in her sleep. Although I was very young, I remember feeling confused and then understanding what heartbroken felt like. But from these experiences, the relationship between my father and I grew. It made us realize that our friendships truly were a gift that could be taken away at any moment. There are many different kinds of love, but the father-son love that me and my dad shared skyrocketed after this. We now shared an understanding of what it felt like to actually lose one of us. Our bond is difficult to put into words, but it is truly a special one. Many families who go through this much tragedy are torn apart. Marriages split up and anger builds. But through the leadership and his faith and the love that my father showed, we were able to grow closer, to grow stronger, and to grow larger with the miracle birth of my sister Gina 2 years after Danielle's passing. Through much adversity, my father has taught me so many positive things. First off, he taught me about the power of prayer. Through his own example of it and his concrete explanations, I learned that even though Danielle was no longer on earth with us, I could still speak to her and form a relationship with her. A relationship I'm proud to say has grown due to the reinforcement of my dad's teachings, along with the formation here at Jesuit. My dad has taught me how to love and support those we hold close and dear. I started playing baseball when I was 5 years old. For the 13 years of participating in all kinds of sports, my father has been present at almost every practice and every game. In fact, at one point in my life, I played 4 sports at one time: football, baseball, hockey, and wrestling. As long as I wanted to do it, my father was willing to sacrifice his time and resources to make it happen. Being my personal taxi so I could play 4 sports at one time requires a lot of patience and a lot of love. Although the Italian blood in my father doesn't always allow him to have the most patience, he makes up for it with his love. He also taught me how to work hard, and that meant pushing me to always give 100% in everything that I do. It is my dad who has really driven me to be determined and competent in whatever I do in life. One of the biggest influences my dad has had in my life is his service to others. The principle of being a man for others proposed at Jesuit was instilled in my life by my father years before attending Jesuit. Following a long but successful cancer treatment regimen, he could have just carried on as the bald guy who sits by himself at baseball games. But not my father. He, along with his friend, began a foundation to benefit others battling leukemia. 18 years later, the Perillo Stafford Leukemia Foundation has raised over $300,000 while benefiting over 1,500 families afflicted with this disease. This is what really defines my father: a man of service and a man of care for others. And he has passed on this principle to me so that one day I will be able to take over and continue his foundation for the years to come. Most people don't know about these events in my life because my father doesn't really like talking about them. But the reality is, he just doesn't like talking about himself. He's humble that way. But I think it is important for people to know about our struggles and the strength that my father has shown to lead my family out of dark times. He is truly an amazing man. Many of you who know my dad probably think of him as just some bald guy who doesn't say much. But by now, you know that the loss of hair isn't a genetic thing. I just got really unlucky with my own hairline problems. For my dad, it's a badge of courage, and it constantly reminds me that every day is a gift. One of my greatest gifts is having Joe Perillo as my father. Dad, I can never put into words the appreciation I have for everything you've done. Thanks for all the little things you have done to make my life easier, except for when I was writing this speech and you wouldn't stop bothering me. You still had no idea what I was writing about, though. Now I'm going to leave you all with a quote that my dad has passed down to me, and he often brings it up. In the end, life is not measured by bank accounts or material goods, but by the differences we make in the lives of others. I love you, Dad. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, John, for so beautifully and eloquently expressing what's in the hearts of so many fathers and sons here today about their relationships. Thank you for sharing your relationships with your dads with us. This year's Men for Others dinner speaker, Vice Admiral Joe McGuire, was a career naval warfare officer who retired from the United States Navy in 2010 after serving for 36 years in uniform. A native of New York City, he earned a Bachelor of Science degree from Manhattan College, where he is a member of their Athletic Hall of Fame. He received a master's degree in scientific and technical intelligence from the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California, and was a National Security Fellow at Harvard University. As a career naval officer, he commanded at every level, to include the Naval Special Warfare Command, the Navy component of the United States Special Operations Command. His last assignment in government was Deputy Director for Strategic Operational Planning in the National Counterterrorism Center in Washington, D.C. While in this position, he was a member of the National Security Council's Counterterrorism Security Group. In 2013, he became the President and CEO of the Special Operations Warrior Foundation. This foundation provides college scholarships for the surviving children of fallen Special Operations Forces, provides family and educational counseling, including in-home tutoring, as well as advocacy support for these families, and it provides financial grants to severely wounded Special Operations Forces service members. Prior to leading the foundation, Vice Admiral McGuire was a vice president with Booz Allen Hamilton. He and his wife, Kathy, the proud parents of 2 children, currently reside here in Tampa. Please join me in giving a warm Tiger welcome to Vice Admiral Joe McGuire.
Well, good evening, everyone. Father, thank you very much for that kind introduction. When Jim Robbins and Father Hermes approached me last November and asked me to speak, I immediately said yes. Many years ago, I sat with my fellow Severian High School students and our fathers at an evening just like this one. There were 5 children in my family, and my parents were spread pretty thin, trying to give attention to each of us. But at the father and son night, I had my father to myself. I remember those high school dinners very well. Because of those memories, I'm honored to play a small role in this Men and Others dinner. That said, of all things I remember about the Severian Fathers and Sons nights, I don't have a clue who spoke at those dinners, and I certainly can't remember anything that they said. So, acknowledging that fact, if I can't make my talk memorable, at least I'll try to make it brief. Having spent my adult life in the SEAL community, I was always focused on executing the mission. So before coming here to be with you, I read your Jesuit mission statement. I have to admit, I kind of like it. I'm sure all of you are familiar with it, but if you'll allow me, I'd like to read it. Jesuit High School, in its mission as a Catholic preparatory school, labors to form men engaged in the world who are dedicated to serving God by being open to growth, intellectually competent, religious, loving, and just. Now, when SEALs receive a mission, the first thing they do is they break the mission statement down into specified tasks and implied tasks. Now, there are quite a few specified tasks in this, to be intellectually competent, religious, loving, and just. But there are quite a few specified tasks, but I think that the one specified task in this mission, implied task, is the most important. Now, it's easy to take the specified tasks, they're self-evident, but the implied tasks, we'd go around the room, what does the mission statement mean to you? What does the mission statement mean to you? And we'd write that out on a whiteboard. So when I read your mission statement, I thought, what would be the implied one? And to me, it is live a purpose-driven life. I'm a big fan of Winston Churchill, have read most of the books about him, and there's one quote that he's said that really means a great deal to me. We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. To me, the true purpose in life is to serve others, to be a leader, and to make a difference. I believe that the only true monument to mankind is the mark you leave on the life of another person. Be a leader. One man can make a difference, but first, you have to know yourself. Find out what you are truly good at and what you really like to do, and then pursue it with a passion. Do that, and I think you will find it easy to live a purpose-driven life. I was very fortunate to find out early in life what I was good at, and I spent 36 years doing the best I could. It all began when I reported to basic SEAL training in Coronado, California. Basic SEAL training, this is just the basic part, is 6 months of long, tortuous runs in the soft sand, midnight swims in the cold water off San Diego, obstacle courses, unending calisthenics, days without sleep, and always, always being cold, wet, and miserable. It is 6 months of being constantly harassed by professionally trained warriors who seek to find the weak of mind and body and eliminate them from being Navy SEALs. Having been blessed with the Dominican sisters in grammar school, the Severian brothers in high school, and the Irish Christian brothers in college, I had been harassed by professionals before. My Catholic education definitely prepared me for Navy SEAL training. Most importantly, though, the true purpose of SEAL training is it seeks to find those students who can lead in an environment of constant stress, failure, and hardships. Basic SEAL training was a lifetime of challenges crammed into 6 months. Benjamin Disraeli said, "There is no education like adversity." SEAL training is a defining experience. Those who succeed become confident in their own ability and learn that they are capable of much more than you ever realized. SEAL training gets progressively harder from one phase to the next. You are held to an even higher standard. The training days become longer. All physical and academic standards become more demanding. There is a saying in SEAL training, and it hangs in the compound: the only easy day was yesterday, and for a very good reason. Many people have seen our basic SEAL training on the Discovery and History channels, as well as in movies like Lone Survivor. What these TV shows and movies don't do is explain the reason why we train the way we do. First, you have to understand just how small the SEAL community is. SEALs are part of United States Special Operations Command, which comprised less than 2% of the United States military. SEALs make up less than 5% of all special operation forces. There are only a little more than 2,000 SEALs in this nation of over 330 million. So every SEAL is dedicated to constant improvement of himself and his SEAL team. It is one of the basic tenets. Because there are so few SEALs, every man has to punch well above his weight class. Shortly after I reported to SEAL training, our commanding officer spoke to my class, which at that time was about 145 men. Although this was many years ago, I remember vividly what he said. I expect each of you to do everything you do today slightly better than yesterday. The goal tomorrow will be to do everything better than you did today, and I expect that to continue each day through training. If you do graduate and report to a SEAL team, you will be in a community that is dedicated to improving everything we do every day. The country is relying on us, and your lives literally depend on it. 6 months later, only 17 of the original 145 remained. All 17 of us learned that we are indeed capable of much more than we ever thought. I think this relates to the specified task in the Jesuit mission statement about being open to growth. Let me tell you about these men. The average SEAL is 32 years old, married with 2 children. 80% of all SEALs who finish our basic training remain in SEAL teams for a military career. It is a very mature, highly educated, and operationally experienced force. I have often been asked why I served so long when I could have retired after 20 years. Well, as Jesuit's mission states, I was indeed engaged in the world, and I truly loved my fellow SEALs. Most importantly, I felt I was living a purpose-driven life. I had the honor of commanding our basic SEAL training 20 years after I graduated. I had the privilege of training young men like Marcus Luttrell, the lone survivor, Chris Kyle, the American sniper, and Ed Byers, who recently received the Congressional Medal of Honor from the President of the United States. I woke up every morning and put my feet on the floor and went to work with these men and their fellow warriors. I believed it was a privilege I had to earn every single day. Many of you have read the books Lone Survivor and American Sniper. Both Marcus Luttrell and Chris Kyle are pretty well known from those books and movies based on them. I'd like to tell you about someone who has not had that kind of exposure. It will also give you an idea of a SEAL's day in the office, why we train the way we do, and the need for constant improvement. In December 2012, Senior Chief Ed Byers, along with other members of his SEAL team, was tasked with the mission to rescue Dr. Dilip Joseph, an American citizen being detained by the Taliban in the mountainous region of Afghanistan. During the mission, the SEALs were yards away from the compound identified as containing the hostage when one of the Taliban spotted the commandos. The point man fired and killed him and rushed to the building. Now, anyone who has been in combat knows that moments like that, you either react or you get killed. Ed Byers was the second assaulter on the approach. The door to the compound was made of 6 heavy blankets, a common method in Afghanistan to insulate their mud-walled houses in winter. While Senior Chief Byers tried to rip down the blankets for the follow-on SEALs, the first SEAL assaulter rushed into the room and was immediately shot and killed by enemy AK-47 fire. Ed, fully aware of the hostile threat inside the room, boldly entered and immediately engaged a guard pointing an AK-47 right at him. By now, the other SEALs had entered the room and were calling for Dr. Joseph to identify himself. Ed heard an unknown voice speaking in English from his right side. He immediately leaped across the room and selflessly flung his body on top of the American hostage, shielding him from the continuous gunshots and rounds being fired across that room. Almost simultaneously, Ed identified an enemy fighter directly behind Dr. Joseph. While covering the hostage with his body, Ed was able to pin the enemy combatant to the wall with his hand around his throat. Unable to fire any effective rounds, Ed was able to restrain the combatant long enough so his SEAL teammates could fire precision shots, eliminating the final threat within the room. Senior Chief Byers then moved the unharmed Dr. Joseph to the helicopter landing zone. Ed, like many SEALs, was a certified paramedic and performed CPR and his teammate during the flight to Bagram Airfield, where the severely wounded SEAL was pronounced dead. That man had a name. It was Petty Officer Nick Check, and he also had a family. Ed learned that he would be receiving the Congressional Medal of Honor last December. A very humble man, Ed's only comment was, "The real heroes are my SEALs, especially the ones killed in the line of duty." Referring to his friend and teammate who made the ultimate sacrifice, Ed continued, "Nick embodied exactly what it is to be a SEAL. He is the American hero, not me." I know many of you are wondering how Ed, Nick, and their teammates were able to do what they do in the face of death. One of the most important lessons we learn in SEAL training is to take pride in everything that you do. Fear is nothing more than a feeling that comes over you when you lack confidence in your ability to cope with the situation as it has been presented to you. A SEAL's training is never done. He is never finished improving, and every man has tremendous pride in what they do. Not the sin of false pride, but pride in doing the very best in everything in life. Do that every day, and you can control almost any challenge that comes your way. As a leader, as the commander, I always felt that real pride is why my people perform, not for rewards. SEAL's favorite psalm is the 23rd Psalm. "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." And believe me, those men walk through the valley quite often. I had the privilege of commanding Naval Special Warfare Community for nearly 3.5 years when we were decisively engaged in combat in both Iraq and Afghanistan. The movies Lone Survivor and American Sniper are about those challenging days. We had many successes on the battlefield, and we also lost many of our brave brothers. I was able to send my 2 children to college. Not all special operators live long enough to do that. As Father said, today I lead a foundation honoring sacrifice of the fallen and severely wounded special operators. So to the men here tonight and the young men, live the Jesuit high school mission. Engage the world. Live a purpose-driven life. Remember, one man can make a difference. Be open to growth. Ask questions. Learn and be intellectually competent. Be loving and just in all that you do. You will face many challenges in life. We all do. Have confidence. Take risks and try new things. Remember, you are capable of much more than you know. You will make mistakes along the way, but life spent making mistakes is not only more honorable, but more useful than a life spent doing nothing. I believe the greatest mistake a a man can make is to be afraid to make one. And remember, every now and then as you go through life, to pause in the pursuit of happiness and just be happy. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Admiral. Thank you for sharing your experiences with us this evening, and thank you for your service to our country. Here's a few small tokens of our appreciation.
Again, I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you, Tim, for your leadership this year as the president of the Dads Club, and the board of officers for all of your hard work throughout the year, all of the many, many hours donated to the school, the wonderful generosity that's represented in this check for $250,000. That represents a lot of commitment and a lot of dedication on many weekends and many nights, parking those cars on behalf of the school. I really want to thank you. And above all, thank you for the tremendous support that you show to Jesuit through the support of your sons. Now, let's now stand for the final prayer. I ask you to join me in saying the prayer for generosity. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Dear Lord, teach me to be generous. Teach me to serve you as you deserve, to give and not to count the cost, to fight and not to heed the wounds, to toil and not to seek for rest, to labor and not to ask for reward, save that of knowing that I am doing your will. St. Ignatius, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Thank you, and have a good evening.